The day the sky turned dark over every major city on Earth, most people looked up and felt fear. The massive ships blocked out the sun. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built. Each one was the size of a small country, and there were dozens of them. Television stations stopped their normal shows. Every channel showed the same thing: dark metal ships hovering in silence. No one knew what to do. Governments tried to contact the vessels, but there was no answer. For 3 hours, the world held its breath. Then the message came. Every screen on the planet showed the same image. A tall creature with gray skin and 4 eyes stared at the camera. It wore golden armor that shined even in the dim light of its ship. Behind it, dozens of similar beings stood at attention. "People of this small world," the creature said. Its voice was deep and cold. "I am High Commander of the Empire. We have traveled across the stars for 10,000 years. We have conquered 112 worlds. Today, your world becomes the 113th. The creature paused. It seemed to expect screaming. It seemed to expect panic. "You have one rotation of your planet to surrender. If you do not, we will demonstrate our power. This is not a request. This is a fact." The screen went black. In the city of Seoul, inside a building that most people did not know existed, a group of officials sat around a long table. They had been called there within minutes of the ship's appearing. Most of them were still trying to understand what was happening. At the head of the table sat a woman named. She was not young, but she was not old either. Her hair was tied back in a simple style, and she wore a dark suit. She had been a diplomat for 20 years. She had handled conflicts between nations. She had prevented wars, but she had never faced anything like this. "We need to respond," one of the generals said. He was a large man with a stern face. "We cannot just sit here." "Respond how?" another official asked. "Did you see those ships? Our weapons would be like throwing stones at a mountain." Listen to them argue. She watched their faces. Some were afraid, some were angry. A few looked like they wanted to run and hide. She understood all of these feelings. She felt them too. But there was something else she felt, something she could not quite name. "We should contact them," she said quietly. The room went silent. Everyone looked at her. "Contact them," General repeated. "They told us to surrender." "They told us we have 1 day," said. "That means they are willing to talk. If they wanted to destroy us immediately, they would have done it already." The officials looked at each other. No one had thought of it that way. "She is right," another voice said. It came from a man sitting at the far end of the table. He was younger than most of the others, maybe 30 years old. He worked in communications and had been brought in to help understand the alien signal. The message was a standard demand for surrender. They want compliance, not destruction. Destruction is expensive, even for an empire. General frowned. "So what do you suggest? We just ask them nicely to leave." "We ask them what they want," said. "We buy time, we learn about them. Right now we know nothing. That is our biggest weakness." The room was quiet again. Then slowly heads began to nod. "Fine," General said. "You talk to them, but if they attack, we fight back with everything we have." "Stood up, then let us hope it does not come to that." 3 hours later and stood on a rooftop in central Seoul. A small shuttle had descended from the main ship. It was coming to pick them up. They were the official representatives of Earth. Looked pale, his hands were shaking slightly. "Are you scared?" asked him. "Yes," he admitted. "Are you not?" "Thought about it?" "I am nervous," she said, "but I am also curious. We are about to meet beings from another world. That is something humans have dreamed about for thousands of years." "Most of those dreams did not include conquest," said. Smiled slightly. "No, but we are still here. We are still talking. That is more than I expected." The shuttle landed in front of them. Its door opened, revealing a dark interior. No one came out to greet them. "Ready?" asked. Took a deep breath. "No, but let us go anyway." They walked into the shuttle. The inside was cold and smelled strange, like metal and something else, something organic. Seats lined the walls, but they were too tall for humans, and had to climb up just to sit down. The shuttle lifted off without warning. Through a small window, they watched Seoul shrink below them. Then the city was gone, and they were surrounded by stars. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing to say. The shuttle docked with the main ship after about 20 minutes. When the door opened, two soldiers were waiting for them. They were even taller in person. Each one stood at least 8 feet high. Their gray skin looked like stone. Their 4 eyes watched and without blinking. "Follow," one of them said. Its voice sounded like rocks grinding together. They walked through long corridors. The ship was massive. Every hallway seemed to go on forever. The walls were covered in strange symbols and images, pictures of battles, of conquered worlds, of the standing over defeated enemies. Studied these images as they walked. She noticed something interesting. In every picture, the defeated species looked terrified. They were kneeling, begging, crying. She filed this information away. Finally, they reached a large door. It opened automatically, revealing a chamber the size of a football stadium. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat a figure in black and gold armor. It was the same creature from the broadcast, High Commander. Around him, hundreds of soldiers stood in perfect rows. They did not move. They barely seemed to breathe. "Approach," commanded, and walked forward. Their footsteps echoed in the massive room. It was designed to make visitors feel small, to make them feel weak. Recognize the tactic. She had seen human leaders use similar tricks. They stopped about 20 feet from the platform, looked down at them. His 4 eyes moved independently, examining them from different angles. "You are the representatives of your world?" he asked. "We are," said. Her voice was steady. "I am Ambassador. This is Communications Director." "Ambassador," repeated the word like it was strange to him. "Other worlds send warriors. They send kings. You send a speaker." "We believe in talking before fighting," said. "It saves time." Made a sound. It might have been a laugh. "Your kind is confident. Good. Confident species are more entertaining to break." He waved one of his hands. Suddenly the room changed. The walls came alive with holographic images, ships, weapons, armies, worlds burning. "The Empire has existed for 50,000 of your years," said. "We were building starships when your ancestors were living in caves. We have weapons that can crack planets in half. We have soldiers that can fight for days without rest. We have conquered species that were old when your son was young." The images showed battle after battle, world after world falling before the fleets, species of all kinds surrendering, fleeing, dying. "This is our power," said. "This is why you will surrender, not because we ask, because you have no choice." Watched the images with wide eyes. His face was pale, but beside him was doing something unexpected. She was smiling. It was small at first, just a slight curve of her lips, but it grew, and then very quietly she laughed. The room went silent. Every turned to look at her, leaned forward, his 4 eyes narrowing. "You laugh?" he asked. His voice was dangerous now. "I show you the death of worlds and you laugh." Covered her mouth, trying to control herself. "I apologize," she said. "I did not mean to be rude. It is just." She looked at the holographic images again. "Is this supposed to frighten us?" Stood up slowly. He was even taller standing, almost 10 feet of muscle and armor. "This has frightened every species we have ever encountered," he said. "It should frighten you." He looked back at her. Something passed between them, an understanding. "Commander," said, "may I show you something?" The High Commander stared at her for a long moment. Then he sat back down. "Show me." Pulled out a small device from his pocket. It was a simple tablet. They let him keep it because their scans showed it had no weapons capability. He pressed a few buttons, and suddenly his own images appeared in the air. Human images. Mushroom clouds rising over cities, soldiers fighting in trenches filled with poison gas, plague victims stacked in the streets, bombs falling on sleeping towns, concentration camps, genocides, nuclear tests, climate disasters. This is our history, said. We have been killing each other for thousands of years. We have invented weapons just as terrible as yours. We have destroyed our own cities. We have driven our own species to the edge of extinction more than once. The images continued. Wars, famines, disasters, humanity at its worst. And yet we are still here, said. We survived every single time. Watch the images. His expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted. Your display, continued, gesturing to the holograms. It looks like something from one of our movies. We have imagined alien invasions since before we could fly. We have written stories about world-ending disasters. We have prepared for things that would make your weapons look like toys. She stepped forward, her smile fading into something harder, something fiercer. So yes, Commander, I laughed, not because I do not respect your power, but because I have seen what my own species can do, and frankly, your empire is not that impressive. The room was absolutely silent. No one had ever spoken to High Commander this way, no one in 10,000 years. Stared at the small human woman standing before him. She was tiny compared to him, weak, fragile. But there was something in her eyes, something he had never seen before. She was not afraid. Interesting, said finally, very interesting indeed. High Commander had conquered many worlds. He had seen many species face their end. Some begged, some fought, some simply gave up and waited to die, but he had never seen a species laugh at him. He sat on his throne and studied the two small humans standing before him. The woman called had stopped smiling now, but there was still something in her eyes, a kind of light that he did not understand. You claim your species has suffered, said slowly. You claim you have faced disasters. This does not make you strong, it makes you damaged. Perhaps, agreed, but damaged things are often the hardest to break. They have already been broken so many times that they know how to survive it. Leaned forward, you speak in riddles. I speak in truth, said. Commander, how many of the species you conquered fought back? The question surprised him. All of them fought at first, then they learned the truth of our power. And how many kept fighting, after they knew they could not win? Was silent, he thought about the question. In his long memory, stretching back through centuries of conquest, he searched for an answer. Few, he admitted finally. Most surrendered once they understood the situation was hopeless. Nodded, that is the difference. Humans do not stop fighting when the situation is hopeless. That is when we fight the hardest. Shifted beside her. He had been quiet since the display of human history, but now he spoke up. There is a word in our language, he said. It does not translate well, but it means something like stubborn spirit or never give up. Every human culture has a version of this word. We value it above almost everything else. Made a sound that might have been a snort. Pretty words, but words do not stop weapons. No, agreed. But words are how wars truly end. Not with weapons, with agreements, with understanding. You did not come here just to destroy us, Commander. If that was all you wanted, you would have done it already. The High Commander sat back in his throne. He did not respond right away. The hundreds of soldiers around them remained perfectly still. The ship hummed quietly in the silence. You are correct, said finally. Destruction is simple, it is also wasteful. The Empire does not waste resources. We conquer worlds to use them, their people, their technology, their planets. So you want us alive, said. You want us working for you. That is the way of the Empire. Surrender and your world joins us. Your people serve us. In return, you receive protection. You receive technology. You receive purpose. Tilted her head, and if we refuse, then you receive nothing except death. The threat hung in the air, but somehow it felt empty now. Something had shifted in the room, could feel it. She pressed forward. "Commander, may I speak honestly?" "You have been speaking honestly since you arrived. Why stop now?" Fair point. Took a breath. "Your empire has conquered 112 worlds through fear. You show your power, you make threats. The other species see no hope, so they surrender. It is efficient. It has worked for thousands of years." "Yes, it has. But it will not work on us." His four eyes narrowed. "Explain." "We have seen your display of power, your weapons, your armies, your ships," gestured at the walls where the holograms had played. "And honestly, we have imagined worse, much worse." She pulled out her own small device. Had his tablet, but had brought something else. A simple phone. They had scanned it and found nothing threatening, just data storage. "May I?" she asked. Waved his hand, permission granted. Pressed some buttons and new images appeared in the air. But these were different from the ones had shown before. These were not real. They were from movies. Giant robots fighting in cities. Alien creatures bursting from human bodies. Planets being destroyed by moon-sized weapons. Zombies overwhelming civilization. Machines rising up against their creators. Gods and monsters clashing in the skies. "This is our fiction," said. "Our entertainment. For hundreds of years we have been imagining every possible way the world could end. Aliens invading, robots taking over, plagues, meteors, nuclear war. We have thought about all of it." The images kept changing. Disaster after disaster, apocalypse after apocalypse, all drawn from human imagination. "We have scared ourselves so many times," continued, "that real threats seem almost familiar, almost comfortable." She zoomed in on one particular image. It was from an old movie, a massive ship hovering over a city, very similar to the vessels currently over Earth. "We made this film 40 years ago," she said. "We have been preparing for you, Commander, in our minds at least. You are not as new to us as you think." Stared at the images. His soldiers shifted uncomfortably. They had never seen anything like this before. Most conquered species did not have time for fiction. They were too busy surviving. "You are saying," said slowly, "that you are not afraid because you have already imagined this scenario." "I am saying that fear is our oldest friend," replied. "We live with it every day. We make art about it. We tell stories about it. We teach our children that the world is dangerous, but they should not give up anyway. Fear does not control us. We control it." The High Commander was silent for a long moment. Around him, his soldiers waited. They were used to this part of the process. Usually, the conquered species would be crying by now, begging for mercy, offering anything to survive. These humans just stood there, waiting, like they had all the time in the universe. "I have been High Commander for 300 of your years," said finally. "I have never had a conversation like this one." "Is that good or bad?" asked. Looked at him. "I do not know yet." He stood up from his throne. When he reached his full height, he towered over the humans like a mountain over trees. But N did not step back. They just looked up at him. "Come," said, "I want to show you something." He walked past them, toward a door at the side of the chamber. After a moment's hesitation and followed. The soldiers did not move to stop them. They walked through more corridors. These were different from the ones before. Smaller, less decorated, more functional. They passed windows that looked out into space. Earth hung in the distance, blue and green and beautiful. Paused to look at it. His home, everything he had ever known, it looked so small from here. "Keep moving," said, but his voice was not harsh. They reached another room. This one was full of screens, data streams, star maps. It looked like a command center, but also like a library. "This is our archive," said. "Records of every world we have encountered, every species, every conquest." He touched a panel and information filled the air. Species after species. Most of them were gone now. absorbed into the empire or simply erased. Do you know what they all had in common? Asked. Fear guessed. No, fear is normal, fear is healthy. It keeps species alive. Turn to face them. What they had in common was hope. When we arrived, they hoped we would leave. When we demanded surrender, they hoped we were bluffing. When we showed our power, they hoped for a miracle. He pointed at a record on the screen. A species with 6 arms and bright blue skin. Their world was now a mining colony. This species hoped until the very end. They died hopping. He pointed at another record, a species with wings and feathers. Their world was now a military base. This species fought at first. Then they gave up and hoped we would show mercy. We did not. He turned back to, but you do not seem to hope, you do not seem to fear. You simply stand there and talk to me like we are equals. Thought about how to answer. She was a diplomat. She had spent her career finding the right words. But this conversation was different. This was not about finding the right words. It was about finding the true ones. Commander, she said, we are not equals. You have ships, weapons, an army. We have nothing that can match your power. Nodded, correct. But power is not the only thing that matters. Stepped closer to him. She had to crane her neck to meet his eyes. You showed us your history, your conquests, your victories. Let me tell you what I saw. She touched the screen, bringing up images of the conquered species. I saw species that gave up, species that broke, species that stopped being themselves the moment they met something stronger. She looked up at him. That will not happen to us. You cannot know that. Yes, I can, because that is not who we are, smiled. Commander, we have a saying on Earth. It goes like this: fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Do you understand? Was quiet for a moment. You value persistence. We worship it. Our heroes are not the strongest or they are the ones who never quit, the ones who kept going when everything was lost. Smile faded. You can conquer our world. You can take our cities and our resources, but you cannot take that, not without killing every single one of us. Stepped forward, and even then our ghosts would probably keep fighting, just out of spite. Looked at him. That was a joke. Yes. Your species makes jokes in situations like this. Especially in situations like this, said. It is how we cope. The High Commander made that strange sound again, the one that might have been a laugh. Interesting, he said. Very interesting. He walked to a window that looked out at Earth. The planet turned slowly below them. Clouds moved across its surface. Lights twinkled in the darkness of the night side. When my fleet arrived at this system, said, we expected a simple conquest. Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are weak. Your planet is divided into many small nations that fight each other. By all measurements, you should be easy to control. But prompted. But you are not afraid, turned to face her. I do not understand why, and that bothers me. Good, said. Tilted his head, good. If you do not understand us, you might be curious enough to talk more before attacking. And if we are talking, we are not dying. The High Commander stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed. It was a real laugh this time, deep and rumbling. It echoed through the archive room. Ambassador, he said, you are either the bravest being I have ever met or the most foolish. I cannot decide which. Why not both? Asked. Laughed again. Why not both indeed? He turned back to the window. Earth still turned below them, beautiful and fragile and somehow still free. I am going to do something I have never done before, said. I am going to give you a chance, not to surrender, not to fight, a chance to prove what you claim. What kind of chance? Asked. Turned to face them both. His 4 eyes gleamed in the starlight. A challenge. If you can prove that your species is truly as remarkable as you claim, I will recommend to the Emperor that Earth be left alone. If you fail, you surrender. No negotiations, no more talking. and looked at each other. This was more than they had hoped for, more than anyone had expected. "What kind of challenge?" asked. "That is up to you," said. "Choose something that shows your greatest strength. Whatever you believe makes humanity special. Prove it to me and you earn your freedom." Took a deep breath. This was it. This was their chance. "We accept," she said. "Good," walked toward the door. "You have 24 of your hours to decide on the challenge. I suggest you use them wisely." He paused at the door and looked back at them. "An ambassador. Do not disappoint me. I am actually beginning to like your species. It would be a shame to have to destroy you." Then he was gone, and stood alone in the archive room. Earth turned slowly outside the window. Somewhere down there, billions of people were waiting to hear their fate. Wells said quietly, "What now?" Looked at their home planet, so small, so vulnerable. "Now," she said, "we show them what humans are really made of." The shuttle ride back to Earth was quiet. Sat with her hands folded in her lap thinking. Watched her, waiting for her to speak, but she did not say a word until they landed. The rooftop in Seoul was crowded now. Officials and soldiers had gathered to meet them. General pushed to the front of the group. "What happened?" he demanded. "Are they going to attack?" "Not yet," said. She walked past him toward the door that led inside. "Call a meeting, everyone who matters. We have 24 hours. 24 hours until what?" Paused at the door. She looked back at all of them, these frightened, hopeful faces, all waiting for her to save them. "Until we decide the fate of our species," she said. "So we should probably make it count." 2 hours later they were back in the underground conference room, but this time there were more people. Leaders from other countries had joined by video. Scientists, generals, experts of every kind. They all wanted to know what was happening. Stood at the head of the table and explained everything. The meeting with, the challenge he had offered, the stakes. "So we have to prove that humanity is special," one of the generals said. "Special how? What does that even mean?" "That is what we need to figure out," said. The room erupted into arguments. Everyone had a different idea. Some wanted to show military strength. Others wanted to demonstrate technology. A few suggested art or music. "Our weapons cannot match theirs," General said. "Showing military strength would be pointless." "Our technology is centuries behind them," a scientist agreed. "We would look like children playing with toys." "Then what?" another official asked. "What can we possibly offer that they do not already have?" The room fell silent. It was a good question that had everything: ships, weapons, soldiers, knowledge. They had conquered over 100 worlds. What could humanity possibly show them that would be impressive? Thought about her conversation with, the images he had shown, the species that had surrendered, the species that had been erased. "They have conquered many worlds," she said slowly, "but they have never met a species like us." "What makes us different?" asked. He had been quiet since they returned, but now he leaned forward with interest. "They rule through fear," said. "Every species they encounter fears them. That fear makes conquest easy. But we do not fear them, not really, and that confuses them." "So our strength is that we are not afraid." General sounded skeptical. "That does not seem like much." "It is more than you think." Stood up and walked to a screen on the wall. She brought up images from human history. "Look at our past, every disaster, every war. Every time we faced extinction, we survived, not because we were stronger or smarter than the threat, but because we refused to quit." She showed them images of cities being rebuilt after earthquakes, countries recovering from plagues, communities coming back to life after wars that should have destroyed them. "They have never seen this," continued. "They have never met a species that fights when there is no hope, that rebuilds when everything is lost, that laughs in the face of death." "You laughed at them," a foreign leader asked through the video screen. His face was pale. "I did," admitted, "and it scared them more than any weapon could have." The room was quiet. People were starting to understand. "The challenge," said slowly, "it should not be about showing what we can do. It should be about showing who we are." Nodded, "Exactly." "But how?" General asked. "How do we show them that?" No one had an answer. They argued for hours. Plans were proposed and rejected. Ideas were discussed and dismissed. Nothing seemed good enough. It was almost midnight when a junior aide spoke up. Her name was. She was young, barely out of university. She had been sitting in the corner listening quietly, but now she raised her hand. "Yes," asked. Stood up nervously. "I have an idea, but it might sound stupid." "Nothing is stupid right now," said. "Tell us." "The commander said we should show our greatest strength," said. "Everyone keeps talking about technology or military power. But what if our greatest strength is not something we do? What if it is something we survive?" The room went quiet. "Go on," encouraged. "Humans are good at surviving disasters," continued. "Better than any species should be. We survive plagues, wars, famines, natural disasters, things that should wipe us out, and not just survive. We come back stronger. We adapt. We keep going." "You want to show them our disasters?" General asked. "I want to show them how we handle disasters," said. "Not the dying part, the getting back up part, the part where we help each other, where we rebuild, where we refuse to stay down." Looked at the young aide with new respect. "A survival challenge." "Yes, let them test us. Let them see how we respond to impossible situations." His voice grew stronger as she spoke. "They think we are weak because we are small and our technology is primitive, but we are not weak. We are survivors. That is what makes us different." The room was silent for a long moment. Then slowly people began to nod. "It could work," said. "Keeps talking about species that gave up, species that broke. If we show him that humans do not break, it would prove our point better than any weapon," finished. General looked uncomfortable. "A survival challenge. What does that even mean? What would they test us with?" "That is the risk," admitted. "We would be putting ourselves in their hands, letting them choose the test. And if we fail, then we surrender." His voice was calm. "But if we do not try, we lose anyway. At least this way we have a chance." The room debated for another hour, but in the end there was no better option. They would propose a survival challenge. Let the test them. Show them what humans were really made of. The next morning and returned to the ship. This time, General came with them. He had insisted on being present for the challenge. High Commander met them in the same great chamber. He sat on his throne, watching them approach with his 4 eyes. "You have decided?" he asked. "We have," stepped forward. "We propose a survival challenge. You choose the test, any disaster, any impossible situation. Put humans through it and watch how we respond." Was quiet for a moment. "That is your challenge. You want us to try to break you?" "Yes, because you will not succeed." The High Commander leaned forward. Bold words, but you realize this could mean death for whoever faces the test. "We know," General said. His voice was gruff but steady. "Humans have always been willing to die for each other. That is part of who we are." Studied them. His soldiers stood silent around the room. No one moved. "Very well," he said finally. "I accept your proposal, but I will choose the test, and I will choose who faces it." "Agreed," said. Stood up from his throne. He walked down from his platform until he stood directly in front of them. Up close, he was even more massive. His armor gleamed in the dim light. "I have conquered 112 worlds," he said. "I have seen every kind of species, every kind of response to fear, but I have never seen what you showed me yesterday. That laugh, that smile in the face of death." He looked at, "I am going to test you personally. Not your soldiers, not your leaders, you, the one who laughed." Felt her heart beat faster, but she did not let it show on her face. "I accept." "And I will face it with her," said quickly. Looked at him, "Why?" Because that is what humans do, said. We do not let each other face things alone. The High Commander made that rumbling sound again. Very well, both of you will face the test. He turned to General. You will watch, and you will tell your world what happens. What is the test? Asked. Smiled, it was not a pleasant sight. His mouth was too wide and his teeth were too sharp. Follow me. He led them deeper into the ship. They walked for what felt like an hour, down corridors, through airlocks, into sections of the ship that looked older and more worn. Finally, they reached a massive door. It was different from the others, heavier, more reinforced. This is our training facility, explained, where we prepare soldiers for the worst conditions imaginable. Behind this door, we can simulate any environment, any disaster, any threat. He turned to face and, you will enter. The simulation will begin. You will face everything we have faced in 10,000 years of conquest. Disasters, attacks, impossible choices. For how long? Asked. Until you break, or until you prove you cannot be broken. Stepped aside. The choice is yours. You can still surrender now. No one would blame you. Looked at the door. Behind it was unknown horror, unknown pain, unknown death maybe. But behind her was Earth, everyone she had ever known, everyone she had ever loved. Open the door, she said. Nodded slowly. He pressed a control panel and the massive door began to slide open. Inside was darkness, pure and complete. One last thing, said. Inside you will forget this is a simulation. Your mind will believe everything is real. The pain will be real. The fear will be real. The deaths will feel real. Deaths repeated. You may die many times in there. Each time you will start again. Each time the challenge will be harder. Looked at them with something that might have been respect. The question is not whether you can survive. The question is how many times you can die and still keep going. Took's hand, he was shaking, she was too. Ready? She asked quietly. No, he admitted, but let us go anyway. Together, they walked into the darkness. General watched them disappear. The door slid shut behind them. Now what? He asked. The High Commander walked to a control station. Screens flickered to life, showing the inside of the chamber, and stood in the darkness looking around. Now, said, we see if humanity is truly as remarkable as they claim. He pressed a button, and inside the chamber, the first disaster began. The darkness did not last long. One moment was standing in an empty chamber holding his hand. The next moment she was somewhere else entirely. She was standing in a city on fire. Buildings burned around her. Smoke filled the sky. People were screaming, running in all directions. The ground shook with explosions. She looked down at herself. She was wearing different clothes now, a dirty uniform. Her hands were covered in ash and blood. Where was? She spun around, searching for him. The crowd pushed against her. Someone knocked her down. She hit the ground hard, tasting dirt. Get up, a voice in her head said. It sounded like her own voice, but stronger, more certain. Get up and find him. She pushed herself to her feet. The fire was spreading. The heat was intense. Real had not lied. This felt completely real. She shouted, where are you? No answer, just more screaming, more explosions. She started running. She did not know where she was going. She just knew she had to find him. She had to keep moving. A building collapsed in front of her. The impact threw her backward. She hit a wall and fell to the ground again. Pain shot through her shoulder. Get up. She got up. She kept running. After what felt like hours, she found him. Was in an alley helping a small child. The child was crying, covered in soot, was trying to calm them down. He shouted when he saw her. Thank God, I thought. I know, me too. She ran to him. We need to move. The fire is spreading. But the people looked around at the chaos. They need help. We cannot help them if we are dead. It was a hard truth, but knew it was true. She grabbed his arm and pulled him along. The child followed, holding his hand. They ran through the burning city. They helped who they could. They left behind those they could not save. Every choice was impossible. Every decision hurt. At some point, a beam fell from a collapsing building. It hit in the chest. She felt her ribs crack. She could not breathe. But she got up. She always got up. The child died in his arms. There was nothing they could do. A piece of debris had caught her when they were not looking. She was gone before could even try to help. He cried, held him. "We have to keep going," she said softly. "I know." His voice was broken. I could not save her." "You tried. That is what matters." They kept moving. The fire eventually consumed everything. The last thing Saw was reaching for her hand as the flames surrounded them. Then darkness again. And then a new disaster. This time they were on a ship, a sinking ship. Water was pouring in from everywhere. People were screaming, fighting for lifeboats. The ship was tilting, sliding into the ocean. Found faster this time. They had learned. In chaos, they looked for each other first. That was the only way to survive. "What do we do?" asked. His clothes were soaked. His teeth were chattering. "We help who we can," said, "and we survive." They worked together. They pulled people from the water. They gave up their spots on lifeboats. They stayed behind over and over so others could escape. They drowned, both of them. The cold water filled their lungs. The darkness swallowed them. And then they were somewhere else again. A plague this time. A city filled with the sick and dying, and found themselves as doctors with no medicine and too many patients. They worked until their hands bled. They watched people die in their arms. But they did not stop. They never stopped. General watched from the control room. The screens showed everything, every disaster, every death, every moment of suffering. High Commander stood beside him, arms crossed. His face showed nothing. "How long has it been?" asked. His voice was hoarse. 4 hours, said. "In the real world, for them," he checked a display, "they have experienced approximately 300 hours, almost 2 weeks of continuous survival." Stared at the screens. He watched pull herself out of a collapsed mine. Her legs were broken. She was dragging herself with her arms, but she was still moving. "She should have given up by now," said. "Anyone would have given up." Yes, agreed, they would have. On another screen was holding back a crowd. Something had happened. Some disaster that required sacrifice. He was volunteering to stay behind so others could escape. "He has done that 17 times now," said quietly. "Sacrificed himself for strangers. Every time he gets the choice, he chooses them." Looked at the alien commander. "Is that normal?" "Normal?" laughed. It was not a happy sound. "No, General, that is not normal. In 10,000 years I have never seen anything like this." They watched in silence as the simulation continued. Disaster after disaster, death after death, and kept going. They died in earthquakes. They died in wars. They died in famines. They died in accidents and attacks in 100 different ways that should have broken anyone. But every time when they woke up in the next scenario, they got up. They looked for each other. They started helping people again. "They remember," said. There was surprise in his voice. "Remember what?" "Everything. Most species forget after a few cycles. The mind protects itself. But these two," he shook his head, "they remember every death, every failure, every person they could not save, and they still keep trying." On the screen was comforting a dying man. She was holding his hand, telling him it would be okay. There was nothing she could do for him, but she stayed anyway. "She has done that 43 times, said. Stayed with someone as they died, even when she could have used that time to save herself." "Why?" asked. "You tell me she is your species." Thought about it. He watched close the man's eyes gently. She took a moment, just a moment. Then she got up and kept moving. Because no one should die alone, said finally. We believe that. It is in our blood, in our culture, in our bones. Was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer. I have conquered many species, he said. I have broken many minds. I have watched the strongest warriors crumble under pressure, but I have never seen this. What do you see? Asked. Turned to face him. For the first time, the alien commander looked uncertain. I see a species that does not know how to give up. I see two people who have died dozens of times and still wake up ready to help. I see, he paused, I see something I do not understand, and that frightens me. Frightens you? Yes, look back at the screens. The Empire has survived for 50,000 years by being the strongest, by being the most feared, but strength can be matched, fear can be overcome. What your people have, he shook his head, that cannot be defeated. How do you defeat someone who does not know how to stay down? Inside the simulation, time kept passing, and faced everything they could imagine, every disaster from every world they had conquered, volcanic eruptions, toxic atmospheres, parasitic infections, psychological torture, physical pain. They died over and over, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, sometimes alone, sometimes together. But every time, they got up again. After what felt like years but was only hours in the real world, something changed. Found herself standing in a peaceful field, green grass, blue sky, no disaster in sight. Was beside her. He looked exhausted, older than he should be. His eyes had seen too much. Is it over? He asked. I do not know, admitted. Stay alert. They waited, nothing happened. The field was quiet. A gentle breeze blew through the grass. Then a figure appeared in front of them. It was, or a projection of him at least. You have survived, he said. 372 hours, 114 deaths between you, more disasters than any species has ever faced in this chamber. Looked at him. She was too tired to feel pride, too tired to feel anything except a deep, bone-weary determination. And she asked. Was silent for a moment. His 4 eyes studied them carefully. And you never gave up, he said. Not once, even when there was no hope, even when death was certain, even when every logical choice would have been to stop fighting and accept the end. That is who we are, said quietly. You asked us to show you, we showed you. Nodded slowly. Yes, you did. The field flickered. The simulation was ending. Reality was seeping back in. When you wake up, said, we will talk, truly talk this time as equals. Felt something shift in her chest. Hope maybe, or just relief. What about the challenge, she asked. Did we pass? Smiled. It was still not a pleasant expression, but there was something different in it now. Something like respect. Ambassador, he said, I do not think there is a test in the universe that your species could not survive. The challenge was never about whether you would break. It was about understanding why you would not. And do you understand now? The simulation flickered again. His image began to fade. I am beginning to, he said, and that is more than I expected. Then everything went dark. When opened her eyes, she was lying on the floor of the training chamber, was beside her. They were both soaked in sweat. Their bodies ached like they had been beaten. But they were alive, really alive, not a simulation. General rushed to them. He knelt beside, his face pale. Are you okay? He asked. What happened in there? Looked up at him. She thought about everything she had experienced, every death, every sacrifice, every moment of pain and fear and determination. Then she smiled. We showed them what we are made of, she said. And somewhere above them, High Commander watched the 2 small humans help each other stand up once again. The great chamber looked different now, or maybe just saw it differently. The walls still showed images of conquered worlds. The soldiers still stood in perfect rows. High Commander still sat on his throne, tall and powerful. But something had changed. stood before him with on one side and General on the other. They had been given time to rest and clean up after the simulation. Food, water, medical attention for their exhausted bodies and minds. Now they were back, ready to hear the verdict. Looked down at them. His 4 eyes moved slowly, studying each of them in turn. I have led the fleet for 300 years, he said. In that time, I have conquered 43 worlds personally. I have broken the spirits of billions of beings. I have seen every kind of fear and every kind of surrender. He stood up from his throne. Slowly, he walked down from his platform until he stood directly in front of. Even with her standing straight, she barely reached his chest. But I have never seen what I saw yesterday, continued. I have never seen a species that simply refuses to break. We are stubborn, said. It is one of our worst qualities. Perhaps, made that rumbling sound that she now recognized as laughter, or perhaps it is your greatest. He turned and walked to the wall of images. With a wave of his hand, he changed the display. Now it showed Earth, beautiful and blue, hanging in the darkness of space. Your world will not be conquered, he said. Not by the Empire, not today. The words hung in the air, felt her heart stop. Behind her, she heard General exhale sharply. Why? Asked. His voice was rough from exhaustion. You could still destroy us, we cannot stop you. No, you cannot, agreed. Your weapons are primitive, your ships are slow, your planet is defenseless against our fleet. He turned back to face them. But conquest is not about destroying worlds. It is about controlling them. And I have learned something very important in the last day, something that changes everything. What is that? Asked. Your species cannot be controlled. Walked closer, his massive form casting a shadow over them. We rule through fear. That has always been our way, but you do not fear us. Not really. You faced death 100 times in that chamber and you still got up, every single time. He shook his head slowly. How do we control a species that does not fear death? How do we break spirits that do not know how to stay broken? How do we conquer people who laugh at our power and then keep fighting anyway? No one answered. The questions were not really questions. They were observations, realizations. The truth is we cannot, said. We could destroy your world, turn it to ash and dust, but we could never truly rule you, and destroying a world gains us nothing. It is wasteful, pointless. So you are letting us go? General asked. His voice was careful, suspicious. Not exactly. Returned to his throne and sat down. I am recommending to the Emperor that Earth be offered a treaty, not as a conquered world, as an ally. The word hung in the air. Ally, it seemed impossible. Just days ago they had been threatened with annihilation. Why would the Empire want us as allies? Asked. You said it yourself, we are primitive, weak. What could we possibly offer you? Leaned forward, his 4 eyes intense. Ambassador, in 50,000 years the Empire has never lost a war. We have never been defeated. We have never faced an enemy we could not conquer. He paused. But we have also never grown, never changed, never been challenged. And we challenge you. You terrify us, said the words simply, without shame. Not because you are strong, because you do not know how to give up, because you laugh at death, because you would fight us forever, generation after generation, until either we destroyed you completely or you somehow found a way to win. He sat back in his throne. The Empire has conquered many worlds, but none of those worlds made us better, they just made us bigger. He looked at, you could make us better, your spirit, your determination, your stubborn refusal to accept defeat. These are things that have lost over thousands of years of easy victories. Thought about his words, she thought about the simulation, all those deaths, all those disasters, all those impossible choices. You want to learn from us, she said slowly. Yes, and perhaps teach you as well. Your technology is primitive, but your spirit is. He searched for the right word. Remarkable. Together we could be something new, something neither of us could be alone. General stepped forward. And if we refuse, if we do not want an alliance with the Empire? Was quiet for a moment. Then we leave. We do not return. Your world continues as it was, alone in the stars. He tilted his head. But I do not think you will refuse. Your species is curious, adventurous. You want to see what is out there. I saw it in the ambassador's eyes the first time we met. He was right, knew he was right. Ever since she had first seen those ships in the sky, part of her had wanted to see more, to know more, to explore. We cannot make this decision alone, she said. This affects all of humanity, every nation, every person. They all have a voice. Of course, nodded. I will give you time, one rotation of your planet, discuss it with your people, let them decide. And if we decide no, then I will respect that decision, stood up again. But Ambassador, tell them what happened here, tell them about the challenge, tell them that you made the Empire laugh. He smiled that too wide smile. I think they will be proud. The shuttle ride back to Earth was different from the first one. Sat by the window watching the stars. Somewhere out there, hundreds of worlds were part of the Empire. Billions of beings lived under their rule. And now humanity had a chance to join them, not as slaves, as partners. What do you think will happen? Asked quietly. I do not know, admitted. Humans have never agreed on anything, getting every nation to accept this alliance. She shook her head. It seems impossible. Impossible has not stopped us before. She looked at him. He was smiling. Despite everything they had been through, despite the deaths and the pain and the fear, he was smiling. You are right, she said. It has not. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere. Earth grew larger in the window. Cities, mountains, oceans, home. Whatever happens, said, we did something today that no one else has ever done. We made them see us, really see us. And what did they see? Thought about it. A species that does not know how to quit. A species that laughs at death and gets back up when they fall. A species that helps strangers even when it costs them everything. He looked at her. They saw humans, the real us, and they were impressed. The shuttle landed in Seoul. The rooftop was crowded again, but this time the faces looking up at them were not just worried. They were hopeful. Stepped out of the shuttle, cameras flashed, people shouted questions, the whole world was watching. She raised her hand for silence. Slowly, the crowd quieted. People of Earth, she said. Her voice was carried by every broadcast system on the planet. Every screen showed her face. I have a message from the stars. She paused, looking out at all those faces, all those eyes, 7 billion people waiting to hear their fate. The Empire came to conquer us. They showed us their power, their weapons, their armies. They expected us to surrender. She smiled. We laughed at them instead. A murmur ran through the crowd. Confusion, disbelief. We showed them what humans are made of. We showed them that we do not break. We do not give up. We do not surrender just because the situation is hopeless. Her voice grew stronger. And because of that, they are offering us something no world has ever received before. Not conquest, not destruction. Alliance. The murmur grew louder. People were talking excitedly. The word alliance spread through the crowd like fire. They want us to join them, not as slaves, as partners. They want to learn from us, from our spirit, from our stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Looked up at the sky, where the massive ship still hovered. They came here expecting to find another world to conquer. Instead, they found something they had never seen before. They found humanity. She lowered her gaze back to the crowd. The choice is ours, all of ours, every nation, every person. We must decide together what kind of future we want, but whatever we decide, know this. She paused, letting the silence stretch. Today, we made an empire that has conquered 100 worlds. Stop and take notice. Today, we showed the universe that humanity is not weak. We are not afraid. We are something new, something special. She took a deep breath. And we are just getting started. The crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, tears. For the first time since the ships appeared, people were not afraid, they were proud. In the days that followed, humanity debated. Nations argued. People discussed the alliance in every language, in every corner of the planet. It was messy. It was loud. It was frustrating. It was perfectly human. In the end, the vote was not even close. 93% of the world chose to accept the alliance, to reach for the stars, to see what was out there. Delivered the decision to High Commander personally. She stood in his great chamber one last time, surrounded by images of conquered worlds. "We accept," she said. Nodded slowly. "Good, I am glad. There is one condition." His 4 eyes narrowed. "A condition. When your people write about this day in their history, make sure they include one detail." "What detail?" Smiled, the same smile she had shown him on the first day. The smile that had confused him, frightened him, changed everything. "Make sure they remember that when humanity met the Empire, we burst into laughter, and then we became friends." Looked at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, that deep, rumbling laugh that she had come to recognize. "Ambassador," he said, "I think this is the beginning of something very interesting." "I know," she said. "That is why I am smiling." Outside the window, Earth hung in the stars, beautiful, fragile, unbroken. And somewhere in the universe, a new story was beginning. A story of humans and aliens, of fear and laughter, of conquest that became friendship. It was impossible, ridiculous, completely absurd. It was perfectly human.